poor twin sisters arrive excited at a rich friend's party, but a mother shouts, "You don't belong here, get out right now." Yet when the billionaire father finds out, he does something unexpected. The pink envelope lay on the kitchen table like an exotic bird perched on unfamiliar ground. Rose looked at it while drying her hands on a worn apron, exhausted after yet another day cleaning other people's houses. Her twin daughters' names were written on it in perfect handwriting, decorated with small gold star doodles. Mum, look what Sophia gave me today." Emma burst into the room, her brown curls bouncing with each step, clutching the envelope to her chest as though it were a treasure. Lily followed close behind, her eyes shining just as brightly. "It's an invitation to her party, Mom," Lily added, hopping beside her sister. "Can we go, please, please?" Rose took the invitation from Emma's eager hands and opened it carefully. The words printed in gold letters practically screamed luxury. Sophia Wells invites Emma and Lily Parker to celebrate her 6th birthday next Saturday at 2 p.m. at the Wells Mansion. Attire, formal. A small handwritten note read, "I hope you can come, Catherine Wells, Sophia's mother." Rose bit her lower lip. The Wells Mansion sat atop the hill that overlooked the small town of Chestnut Grove. It was a completely different world from the 2-bedroom apartment where they lived on the opposite side of town. "So can we go?" Emma asked, her brown eyes fixed on her mother with a hope that tugged at Rose's heart. "I need to think about it, sweethearts," Rose answered, folding the invitation back into the envelope. The girls visibly wilted. Rose knew how much that invitation meant to them. At Chestnut Grove's private school, her daughters were the only ones there on a full scholarship, a new inclusion program the principal had recently implemented. Rose cleaned the school 3 times a week to help supplement that scholarship. "But why do we need to think about it? It's just a party," Lily argued, disappointment clear in her voice. Rose knelt down so she was at her daughter's eye level. "It's not that simple, my love, this party. It's going to be different from the ones we're used to." "Different how?" Emma tilted her head, puzzled. Rose hesitated. How could she explain social differences to 5-year-olds, how some people would look at them? How could she say that, as hard as she tried, she couldn't give them the same expensive gifts the other kids would bring? "Sophia's family has a lot of money," Rose explained gently. "The party will be very fancy." "Like a princess ball?" Lily asked, eyes wide. Rose smiled despite her worries. "Something like that." The twins looked at each other with renewed excitement, and Rose felt her heart tighten. It was unfair that her daughters had to learn so early about the invisible divides in society. After 3 days of thinking it over, Rose finally made her decision. On her way home from work, she stopped at a store that sold high-quality used clothing. It was where she always found hidden treasures at prices she could afford. The saleswoman, a middle-aged lady named Martha, already knew Rose and her daughters. "Looking for something special today?" Martha asked, noticing how Rose carefully scanned the children's clothing section. "My girls were invited to a birthday party. A really fancy one," Rose explained, a hint of nervousness in her voice. Martha smiled knowingly. "I have something that might work perfectly." She disappeared into the back of the store and returned with 2 small dresses that looked almost new, one light blue and the other a pale pink, both with delicate lace details. "They arrived yesterday from an expensive store at the mall," Martha explained, showing the original tags still attached. "The owner's daughter outgrew them so quickly she never wore them." Rose ran her hand over the soft fabric, admiring the craftsmanship. They were perfect, exactly the kind of dress the other girls at the party would be wearing. "How much?" she asked, bracing herself for the worst. When Martha mentioned the price, Rose nearly hugged the woman. It was less than half of what she had expected to pay, even at a second-hand store. "Consider it a gift from me to the girls," Martha winked. "The rest is on you." On the Saturday of the party, the small apartment was filled with excitement. Rose had arranged to have the day off, a rare occurrence to get the girls ready. "Stand still, Emma," Rose said as she carefully braided her daughter's hair, weaving in tiny blue ribbons to match her dress. "I'm trying, Mum, but I'm just so excited," Emma replied, practically vibrating with anticipation. Next to them, Lily was almost ready, admiring her reflection in the living room mirror. The pink dress fit her perfectly, making her look, as she said, like a real princess. Rose had saved up for a few weeks to buy a modest gift for Sophia, a picture book about friendship that the twins had chosen with care at the local bookstore. It was wrapped in colorful paper, decorated with a bow the girls had made themselves. "What if the other kids don't like us?" Lily suddenly asked, a shadow of insecurity crossing her small face. Rose set the brush down and hugged them both. "They'll love you just like Sophia does. You're smart, kind, and beautiful. What else could anyone want in a friend?" The twins smiled, though Rose could see a hint of fear lingering in their eyes. She was afraid too, but did her best to hide it. At 1 p.m., Rose gave the girls a final once-over. The dresses were spotless, their hair carefully styled, and each wore a small strand of fake pearls Rose had found on clearance years ago, saved for a special occasion. "You look perfect," Rose said, feeling a mix of pride and nostalgia as she saw how her babies were growing up. "We have to hurry or we'll miss the bus," Rose warned, grabbing her worn purse. The bus stop was 2 blocks away, and bus number 42 was the only one that went up to the wealthy neighborhood on the hill. The three hurried down the street, the twins holding their carefully wrapped gift, trying not to wrinkle their special dresses. By the time they arrived at the stop, the bus was already pulling up. The bus halted with a screech of brakes. Rose paid the fares and helped the girls climb the tall steps. They found empty seats near the window, with the twins sitting together and Rose beside them. "Have you thought about what you'll say to Sophia when you get there?" Rose asked, trying to calm her own nervousness by making conversation. "We'll say happy birthday and give her the present," Emma answered enthusiastically. "I'll tell her how pretty her dress is," Lily added, always noticing details. Rose smiled, tucking a stray piece of Lily's hair behind her ear. As the bus climbed the hill, the scenery changed noticeably. The houses got bigger, the lawns greener and better kept. The girls looked out the window, pointing at every detail that caught their attention. A fountain in one yard, a shiny car parked in another. "We're here," Rose announced, pulling the cord to signal the stop. "Sophia's house is that big white one at the end of this street." As they got off the bus, Rose held her daughter's hands tightly. They walked along the pristine sidewalk, passing ornate gates and immaculate gardens. The twins stared wide-eyed at everything. When they finally reached the gates of the Wells mansion, Rose felt her heart race. Several children in fancy attire were already entering with their parents, some arriving in luxurious cars. "Remember to say thank you for being invited," Rose instructed, adjusting the girls' hair ribbons. "And behave like the polite girls you are." Emma and Lily nodded seriously, suddenly seeming older than their 5 years. Rose mustered the courage and pressed the doorbell. As they waited, she bent down and kissed each one on the forehead. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. The gates of the Wells mansion swung wide open, revealing a garden that looked like something from a storybook. Perfectly trimmed lawns stretched in every direction, dotted with colorful flowers laid out in intricate patterns. A central fountain spouted crystal-clear water, and butterflies danced around it, as though part of the decor. Emma and Lily gripped Rose's hands more tightly as they walked along the stone path. Ahead, the imposing mansion glistened under the afternoon sun, its tall windows reflecting the light like giant mirrors. "It's like Sleeping Beauty's castle," Lily whispered, awestruck. Rose gave a nervous smile. "Remember what we talked about, girls?" As they approached the entrance, a man in a dark suit with a rigid posture greeted them with a formal nod. "Welcome to the Wells residence," he said, consulting a list in his hands. "May I have your names, please?" "Emma and Lily Parker," Rose replied, feeling out of place under the man's appraising gaze. After a moment scanning the list, he nodded. "Ah yes, Miss Sophia's special guests, please follow me." The interior of the mansion was even more impressive. The foyer, with its marble floors and curved staircase, seemed immense to the girls. Colorful balloons floated near the high ceiling, and shiny streamers cascaded down the walls. At the far end, a long table displayed a 3-tiered birthday cake surrounded by more sweets than they could have imagined. "Wow," Emma breathed, her eyes trying to take in every detail at once. Sophia, the birthday girl, spotted the twins from the stairs and came running down, her lilac party dress flowing behind her. "Emma, Lily, you made it," she exclaimed, giving her friends a genuine hug. "I thought you weren't coming because you were so late." The twins smiled, relieved by the warm reception. Rose watched with a lighter heart. "Happy birthday, Sophia," Emma said, handing over the wrapped gift. "We brought you a present." "Thank you," Sophia replied, taking the package carefully. "Do you want to see my room? I got a new dollhouse." Before the girls could answer, a woman's voice cut through the air. "Sophia, sweetheart, aren't you going to introduce your friends?" Catherine Wells descended the staircase with the elegance of someone who was born to command any room. Her navy blue silk dress looked simple at first glance, but Rose immediately recognized the expensive label. Her blonde hair was styled flawlessly, and her smile did not reach her eyes as she approached. "Mom, these are Emma and Lily. They're from my school," Sophia introduced, still holding the present. Catherine examined the twins from head to toe, her gaze lingering on their simple though lovely dresses. "Ah, yes, the scholarship kids." The word sounded like an accusation. Rose straightened her shoulders, determined not to show her discomfort. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Wells," Rose said, extending her hand. "Thank you for inviting my daughters to the party." Catherine accepted the handshake briefly, as though afraid of contamination. Of course, Sophia insisted. "Well, girls," Rose said, turning to Emma and Lily, "behave, have fun, and remember I'll be back to get you at 6 o'clock. She bent down and kissed each of them on the forehead. "I'll wait for you at the bus stop, just like we planned." "Yes, Mom," the twins answered in unison. "Don't worry," Catherine said with a chilly smile. "We'll take good care of them." Rose hesitated for a moment, sensing something indefinable in Catherine's tone, but she had already arranged time off work to bring the girls here and couldn't afford to lose more hours. She gave her daughters one last hug and made her way out, casting a final glance over her shoulder before passing through the gates. As soon as Rose was out of sight, Catherine's smile vanished. "Sophia, why don't you take your friends to meet the other children?" she suggested, more of a command than a request. "The party has already started in the backyard." Sophia, not sensing the change in her mother's tone, grabbed the twins' hands excitedly. "Come on, there's a bounce house and a magician." The three headed toward the backyard, passing corridors lined with expensive paintings and statues that seemed to watch them. Emma and Lily tried not to show how impressed they were, recalling Rose's advice not to stare wide-eyed. The backyard was even more spectacular. A giant inflatable castle dominated one corner, while tables decorated with a princess theme occupied another. Children ran around laughing, served by waiters offering colorful drinks in crystal glasses. At the far end, a small stage had been set up where a magician entertained a group of kids. "Let's go jump in the castle first," Sophia suggested, already removing her shoes. Emma and Lily followed her, carefully taking off their shoes and lining them up neatly as Rose had taught them. For almost an hour, the three jumped and laughed in the inflatable castle, completely oblivious to the curious and sometimes disdainful looks from other children and their parents. "Who are those girls bouncing with Sophia?" asked one mother to another, not bothering to lower her voice. "Looks like they're the scholarship kids from her school," replied the other. "Catherine told me Sophia insisted on inviting them. Poor thing, she's still so naive." After the bounce house, Sophia took the twins to see the magician, who pulled coins from behind their ears and turned colorful handkerchiefs into flowers. Next, they joined a treasure hunt throughout the garden, each receiving a small tiara as a participation prize. "For your house is amazing," Emma remarked as the three of them took a break, sipping fruit punch served in glasses that looked like real crystal. "Where do you live?" Sophia asked curiously. "On the other side of town," Lily answered, "in an apartment building near the Central Park. Do you have a yard?" Emma and Lily exchanged looks. "No, but we have a small balcony where Mom grows herbs," Emma explained. "And sometimes we go to the park to play," Lily added. "It's almost like a giant yard." Sophia seemed genuinely interested, asking questions about what it was like to live in an apartment, something completely foreign to her. Their conversation was interrupted when Catherine appeared with a photographer in tow. "Sophia, dear, it's time for pictures with your friends from ballet class," she announced, casting a look at the twins that clearly excluded them. Can Emma and Lily join us? Sophia asked hopefully. Catherine forced a smile. No, honey, just the ballet girls. You two can wait here, she added, addressing the twins. Sophia was whisked away, casting a regretful glance over her shoulder. Emma and Lily were left alone, suddenly aware of the looks from the other children and mothers around them. Who are they? One girl in a fancy pink dress asked loud enough for them to hear. I don't know. I've never seen them before, answered another. Their dresses are weird, commented a third, eliciting giggles. Emma took Lily's hand, noticing her sister was on the verge of tears. Let's take a walk, she suggested, trying to sound brave. The two stood and began wandering around the garden, trying to ignore the whispers and stares that followed them. They passed groups of adults who either ignored them or, worse, stopped talking as they approached. Catherine reappeared after the photos, leaving Sophia with the other ballet girls. Her eyes scanned the backyard until they landed on the twins, who were now watching the magician from a distance. With determined steps, she approached them. Hello, girls, Catherine said, her voice sweet but her gaze cold. Are you having fun? Yes, ma'am, Emma replied politely. Sophia's house is beautiful, Lily added timidly. Catherine smiled without warmth. It is, isn't it? It was built for people like us. She paused, her gaze intensifying. I must ask, who exactly invited you to this party? Emma frowned, confused by the question. Sophia gave us invitations at school. And you didn't think it was odd? Two girls like you coming to a party like this? Lily's eyes widened, picking up Catherine's tone before Emma did. What do you mean by girls like us? Catherine glanced around quickly to make sure no one important was listening. Look around you. See the other children, their clothes, their parents. Now look at yourselves. Emma instinctively squeezed Lily's hand tighter. Sophia is our friend, she said, voice trembling more than she wanted to admit. Sophia is a child who doesn't yet understand how the world works, Catherine retorted, losing patience. Let me make it clear. You do not belong here. Leave now. Her voice rose on the last words, drawing the attention of several nearby guests. An uncomfortable hush fell over that part of the garden. Emma and Lily stood frozen, tears now streaming freely down Lily's cheeks. Sophia, who had returned from the photos, watched from a distance, eyes wide in shock. For a moment it seemed she might intervene. She took a step forward, opening her mouth as if to say something, but then her gaze met Catherine's cold, authoritarian, unyielding, and she drew back, lowering her head. I'm sorry, Sophia whispered so quietly that only she could hear. But our mom's not coming until 6, Lily managed between sobs. I don't care, Catherine replied, gesturing for the butler who had been watching from afar. Charles will take you to the bus stop, or wherever your mother is picking you up. The butler approached, clearly uncomfortable with the situation, but obedient. Couldn't we stay until our mom comes? Emma tried again, her voice shaking despite her effort to sound strong. No, you'll leave now, Catherine insisted. She turned to Charles. Make sure they don't come back. A murmur spread among the guests. Some of the mothers looked on in shock, others with barely concealed satisfaction. The children were confused, never having witnessed an adult treat other children in such a manner. Charles, visibly distressed, extended a hand to the twins. Come, girls, I can walk you to the bus stop. Emma and Lily, holding hands and silently crying, began following the butler toward the exit. The tiaras they'd won in the treasure hunt, symbols of recent joy, now felt heavy on their heads, cruel reminders of a world that wasn't theirs. As they crossed the garden, many guests moved aside as if poverty were contagious. Some adults whispered among themselves. Others pretended not to see the pitiful scene. The children looked on in confusion, unsure of what was happening. Sophia remained rooted a few yards away, her tearful eyes fixed on her friends being escorted out. For an instant she took a hesitant step toward the twins, but Catherine's stern look made her retreat. The girl lowered her head, ashamed of her own cowardice, but too afraid to defy her mother. As they neared the main gate, Emma tried to comfort Lily, who was softly sobbing. Hair's going to be okay, she whispered, squeezing her sister's hand. We'll wait for Mom at the stop and tell her everything. But we're being sent away, Lily replied between sniffles, like we did something wrong. Charles, walking ahead, heard their conversation, his heart aching. He had worked for the Wells family for over a decade, but had never felt so uneasy about one of Catherine's orders. "I'm sorry about this, girls," he said quietly once they were out of sight of the guests. "Mrs. Wells can be demanding sometimes." The three reached the large front gate. The same stone path that had seemed magical now stretched before them like a cruel reminder of the distance between the twins' world and Sophia's. "Do you know the way back to the bus stop?" Charles asked, hesitant to abandon the children but knowing he'd be reprimanded if he went any further. Emma nodded, trying to appear braver than she felt. "Yes, sir, it's down the street and to the right." Charles knelt down to their eye level. "I have something for you," he said, pulling 2 small packages from his pocket. "I saved these candies for later, but I think you need them more than I do." The twins accepted the treats with sad smiles, the small act of kindness a sharp contrast to the cruelty they'd just experienced. "Thank you," Emma said for both of them. The butler watched sorrowfully as the 2 little girls walked away through the main gate, their colorful dresses growing smaller and smaller as they made their way down the hill toward the bus stop. Back in the garden, the party continued as though nothing had happened. Music played, children laughed, adults chatted. Catherine moved among the guests with a radiant smile, pleased that she had resolved the issue. Only Sophia remained quiet in a corner, her gaze fixed on the direction in which her friends had been taken. In her eyes there was a mix of sadness and confusion no 6-year-old should ever feel on her birthday. What no one knew was that, from the second-floor office of the mansion, someone had witnessed the entire scene through the window, and that person was furious. Matthew Wells contemplated the view from his office window on the second floor of the mansion. From there, he had a prime vantage point of the backyard where his daughter's birthday party was unfolding. He was immersed in important documents when the children's laughter caught his attention. He considered closing the window, but something made him pause. He watched the children play, his eyes eventually finding Sophia. He smiled, seeing her so happy, running around with other girls on a treasure hunt. It was rare to set aside quality time for his daughter, and seeing her joy, even from a distance, warmed his heart. Matthew had grown up in very different circumstances from those he now provided for Sophia. The son of a housekeeper and a factory worker, he knew early on what hard work and deprivation meant. His rise in society was the result of talent, perseverance, and a few lucky breaks he had capitalized on. Catherine, his wife, came from an old money family and never had to worry about finances. Perhaps that explained their vastly different views on parenting and values. As he observed the party, his attention was drawn to 2 little girls he didn't recognize at first. They wore simple yet lovely dresses, with their hair styled in colorful ribbons. They seemed enthralled by everything around them, as though they were in a dream world. Something about them deeply moved Matthew, maybe the way they held hands, or how their wide-eyed admiration roamed the garden with genuine wonder. They must be the scholarship students, he thought, recalling Sophia mentioning 2 new friends at school. He was about to return to his documents when he noticed his wife approaching the girls. Even at a distance, he recognized Catherine's rigid posture, the slight tilt of her head she adopted when she was about to say something unpleasant. Instinctively, he paid closer attention. He couldn't hear the words, but their body language spoke volumes. Catherine gestured sharply, her face a mask of disapproval. The girls seemed to shrink with every second, one of them visibly starting to cry. Sophia stood only a few steps away, clearly uncomfortable but making no move to intervene. Then he saw the butler approach and begin escorting the girls away from the backyard. At that moment, Matthew fully understood what was happening. "My God, she's throwing those children out," he murmured, incredulous. A wave of memories flooded him, recollections of his own childhood, of how he felt when he was excluded for not having the right clothes, for his accent, or for his address. He particularly recalled a party when he was 9, how he'd saved for weeks to buy a decent gift for a classmate, only for the boy's mother to stop him at the door, questioning who had invited him, and then suggesting it would be better for everyone if he left the present and went home. The humiliation of that day had never fully left him, and now his own wife was inflicting that same pain on 2 children at his daughter's birthday party. in his own home. Matthew felt his blood boil. He tossed the documents aside and left his office with long strides, descending the main staircase in seconds. He wove through the guests in the foyer, ignoring attempts at conversation and greetings, his eyes fixed on the door leading to the backyard. When he finally reached the outdoors, he saw the twins being led by the butler toward the main gate. At the same time, Catherine returned to the group of mothers, acting as if nothing had happened. "Charles?" Matthew called out, his voice rising over the party chatter. "Wait!" The butler halted at once, turning with the two girls in tow. Catherine also turned, her social smile vanishing as she noticed her husband's expression. In a few seconds, Matthew crossed the lawn and reached the girls. He knelt down to be at their eye level, ignoring the fact that his expensive suit was now grazing the grass. "Hello," he said softly, trying not to scare them even more. "I'm Matthew, Sophia's dad." The twins gazed at him with tear-filled eyes, clearly confused and frightened. The taller of the two, Emma, he guessed, shifted slightly in front of her sister, a protective gesture that was both childish and oddly mature. "Nice to meet you, sir," she replied in a shaky but polite voice. "Were you leaving?" Matthew asked, though he already knew the answer. "Mrs. Wells said we have to go," Lily whispered, barely audible. Matthew felt a surge of anger, but kept his expression gentle. "Well, this is also my house, and I'd very much like you to stay. Sophia would be so sad if her friends left so soon." Standing up, he turned to Charles. "Please take the girls back to the party and offer them some ice cream." Charles, visibly relieved, nodded. "Of course, sir. This way, girls." Matthew watched as the butler led the twins back to the center of the garden, noticing how they still looked uneasy, casting worried glances at Catherine, who was now watching the scene with a tense expression. Taking a deep breath to control his anger, Matthew walked deliberately toward his wife. The guests nearby, sensing the tension, subtly moved away, creating a small open space around the couple. "What do you think you're doing?" Catherine hissed under her breath as he approached. Matthew ignored her question. "You humiliated two children because they're poor?" he asked, not bothering to lower his voice. Silence fell over that section of the garden. Catherine glanced around, noticing curious onlookers, and forced a smile. "Matthew, darling, it's not what you think. There was just some confusion with the invitation and—" "Don't lie to me," he interrupted, his tone calm yet firm. "I saw it all from my office window. I saw how you approached them, saw how they began to cry, saw how you sent them away." Catherine paled slightly, but maintained her composure. "They don't fit in here, Matthew. Look around. This isn't just any party. It's our daughter's birthday. We have standards to uphold." "Standards?" Matthew repeated, incredulous. "What kind of standards teach our daughter to be cruel to those less fortunate?" "Don't be dramatic," she replied, her irritation starting to slip through. "I'm just protecting Sophia's interests. Those girls, they're different. They don't have the same upbringing, the same values." Matthew felt his anger flare even higher. "I was a poor boy," he said, his voice loud enough for several nearby guests to hear. "I was turned away from places like this, and now you're doing it in my own house." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the background music seemed to fade, as if the DJ had sensed the tension in the air. Catherine stared at her husband, shocked both by his words and by this public confrontation. In 6 years of marriage, Matthew rarely spoke of his humble origins, especially not in front of others. "Matthew, please," she murmured, attempting to touch his arm. "Our guests." He pulled away from her touch. "I don't care about the guests," he responded coldly. "I care about the example we're setting for our daughter. I care about the pain you caused those children." He looked around at the surprised faces, some embarrassed, others merely curious. His eyes found Sophia watching from a distance, looking small and afraid. "What do you think Sophia learned today?" he continued, turning back to Catherine. "That it's okay to humiliate people based on their financial situation? That friendship only counts among social equals?" "You're exaggerating," Catherine protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "They're just schoolmates. Sophia barely knows them." "Enough to invite them to her birthday," Matthew pointed out. "Enough to want them here." He took a deep breath, glancing again toward the garden. The twins sat on a bench, each with a bowl of ice cream they barely touched, still clearly shaken. Charles stood nearby, as if ensuring they wouldn't be bothered again. "Catherine, you need to fix this right now." The firmness in his voice left no room for argument. Catherine stared at him for a long moment, weighing her options. Finally, her shoulders sagged slightly in defeat. "What exactly do you want me to do?" she asked, her voice tense. "I want you to apologize to them, publicly, just as you publicly humiliated them." He paused, then added, "And I want Sophia to do the same." "Sophia?" Catherine exclaimed, surprised. "She didn't do anything." "Exactly," Matthew replied firmly. "She didn't do anything when her friends were being mistreated. She needs to learn that staying silent in the face of cruelty is almost as bad as committing it." Catherine opened her mouth to protest again, but something in Matthew's expression made her stop. She had never seen him this resolute, this unyielding. "Very well," she said at last, adjusting her dress in a nervous gesture. "Let's get this over with." Matthew beckoned to Sophia, who approached hesitantly. The little girl looked like she was about to cry, her eyes darting between her father and mother, trying to make sense of the situation. "Daddy?" she asked in a small voice. "Are you mad at me?" Matthew's heart squeezed at the fear in his daughter's eyes. He knelt and took her tiny hands in his. "I'm not angry, sweetheart, but I am disappointed. You saw your mom send your friends away and you didn't say anything. Didn't that feel wrong?" Sophia lowered her gaze, ashamed. "It did," she admitted, "but Mom seemed so, and I got scared." "I know," Matthew said gently. "It's hard to do the right thing sometimes, especially when we're afraid, but we have a chance to fix it now." He looked to his wife. "All of us do." Together, the three walked over to the bench where Emma and Lily were seated. A small group of guests formed a respectful distance away, all pretending not to watch while keenly observing everything. The twins shrank back a bit at the sight of Catherine, but relaxed slightly upon noticing Matthew and Sophia. "Emma, Lily," Matthew began, using the names he'd overheard earlier, "my wife and daughter have something to say to you." Catherine took a deep breath, pride battling visibly with the need to concede. Finally, casting a quick glance at her husband, she said, "I apologize for the earlier misunderstanding. You're welcome to stay at the party." The words sounded mechanical, almost rehearsed, but it was a start. Matthew turned his attention to Sophia, who took a step forward, tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you," she said, her voice small but sincere. "You're my friends, and I should have said something." Emma and Lily looked at each other, communicating silently in that special way twins do. "It's okay," Emma finally said. "We understand." "Can we still be friends?" Sophia asked hopefully. Lily nodded, a small smile forming. "Sure." "Great," Matthew said, relieved to see the beginnings of reconciliation. "Why don't you three go enjoy the party now? I think the clown show is about to start." The girls needed no further prompting. Sophia took the twins' hands, and the three ran off toward the stage on the other side of the garden, already chatting and laughing as if nothing had happened. The guests, realizing the drama had ended, returned to their conversations, although many still cast curious glances at the Wells couple. "Satisfied?" Catherine asked when they were alone, her tone making it clear she was far from it. "For now," Matthew replied, "but this isn't over, Catherine, not by a long shot." She stared at him for a moment, then walked away with the poise of a queen, resuming her role as hostess as though nothing had happened. Matthew noticed the stiffness in her shoulders, the tension in her smile. She was furious with herself for being caught, with him for calling her out, with the girls for existing. Over the next few hours, the party continued without further incident. Matthew made it a point to join the children in various activities, ensuring the twins felt truly welcome. He formally introduced himself to them, asked about school, about their favorite things. Gradually, he watched their shyness melt away, replaced by genuine smiles and lively chatter. He discovered Emma was passionate about books and dreamed of being a writer someday. Lily loved math and had a natural flair for numbers. Both were bright, polite, and sweet, exactly the kind of influences he wanted for his daughter. Occasionally, his eyes met Catherine's, who watched everything from a distance. She fulfilled her role of hostess flawlessly, but whenever she thought no one was looking, her gaze would return to the twins cold, evaluating, almost calculating. Even though she had apologized, her wounded pride prevented her from truly accepting their presence. For Catherine, status and appearances had always mattered more than character or kindness. It was one of many fundamental differences between them. Differences he had overlooked for a long time, for the sake of family harmony. When the clock struck 6, the twins began their goodbyes. Their mother would be waiting at the bus stop, they explained to Matthew. He offered them a ride home, but Emma, displaying remarkable maturity for her age, said their mother would worry if she didn't find them at the usual spot. "Maybe at least we can walk you there," Sophia suggested, looking at her father hopefully. Matthew smiled. "Of course, let's all go together." Catherine, who had been nearby overseeing the gifts, gave him a look of disapproval. "Matthew, I don't think that's necessary." "I do," he interrupted firmly. "And as you mentioned earlier, this is my house too." She pressed her lips together but did not argue. Matthew, Sophia, and the twins walked together to the mansion's main gate. The sun was starting to set, painting the sky in orange hues. Along the way, Sophia and the twins made plans to meet again at school, exchanging excited ideas for games and activities. Watching them, Matthew felt a mix of emotions. Pride in Sophia, who seemed to have learned something important that day, sadness for Catherine's coldness, and a certain nostalgia for his own childhood, the challenges, the exclusions, but also the small victories and acts of kindness that had kept him going. When they reached the gate, a woman was waiting on the sidewalk. Rose, the twins' mother, smiled with relief upon seeing her daughters, but faltered slightly when she noticed Matthew. "Good afternoon," she said, a note of concern in her voice. "I hope the girls behaved." "They were perfect," Matthew answered sincerely. "A delight to have around. Sophia is lucky to have them as friends." Rose looked surprised by the compliment, as though unused to hearing anything positive about her daughters in places like this. "Thank you for having them," she said, pulling the twins closer in a protective manner. "The pleasure was ours," Matthew assured her. "We hope to see them again soon, maybe. Maybe Sophia can visit them sometime." The suggestion surprised everyone. Rose, the twins, and even Sophia, who bounced with excitement. "Can I, Mom, please?" Sophia begged. Rose hesitated, torn between her daughter's joy and the fear of exposing her modest home to the Wells family's scrutiny. "It would be nice," she finally replied, "though our apartment is very simple." "The best homes often are," Matthew said with a genuine smile. After exchanging phone numbers and goodbyes, Matthew and Sophia watched the trio head off toward the bus stop. The twins, still wearing the tiaras from the treasure hunt, chatted animatedly with their mother, likely recounting all their adventures. "I really like them," Sophia said, holding her father's hand. "I do too, Princess," Matthew responded. "I do too." Together they went back into the mansion, where the last guests were starting to leave. Catherine greeted them in the foyer, with a perfect smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Did the little girls leave?" she asked, as if she were talking about a solved problem. "Emma and Lily went home with their mother," Matthew deliberately corrected. "Yes, after having a wonderful time." Catherine made a non-committal sound, halfway between a sigh and a disinterested "I invited Sophia to visit their home sometime," Matthew added casually, watching his wife's reaction. As expected, Catherine's smile froze. "You did what?" "It would be an educational experience for her, don't you think? To see how other people live?" Catherine regarded him as though he'd suggested sending Sophia to Mars. "Absolutely not. I will not allow our daughter to go to some place like that." Sophia, sensing another argument, quietly slipped away toward the stairs. "It's not a matter of permission, Catherine," Matthew replied. "It's about education, values. Those girls are bright, kind, and well-behaved, exactly the kind of influence I want for our daughter." "Have you lost your mind?" she hissed. "They're scholarship kids, Matthew. Their mother is a cleaning lady. There is absolutely nothing Sophia stands to gain from that association." Matthew studied her for a long moment, seeing not just the woman he married, but all the layers of prejudice and elitism that shaped her. He had hoped that with time she would change, that her love for their daughter would help her see beyond appearance and social status. But the incident today showed otherwise. "There's a lot Sophia can learn from them," he said at last. Compassion, humility, appreciation for what she has. Most importantly, that a person's value isn't tied to their address or bank account. Catherine rolled her eyes exasperated. Spare me the social justice lecture, Matthew. We live in the real world, not in some moralistic fairy tale. Status and connections matter. They always have and they always will. Maybe to you, he answered sadly, but I don't want it to be that way for Sophia. With that, he walked away, leaving Catherine alone in the foyer. The party was over, but the real drama was only beginning. As he climbed the stairs to his daughter's room, Matthew knew today's intervention was just the first step in a much larger battle, a battle for the values and the future of his family. Catherine watched him climb the stairs, her cold gaze calculating the consequences of this public defiance. In the garden, staff were already cleaning up the party's remnants: wilted balloons, disposable plates, torn streamers, leftovers from a celebration she felt had been ruined. Not by the twins' arrival, but by the exposure of something she preferred to keep hidden, the truth about who she really was. 3 days had passed since the birthday party, but for Catherine, each minute seemed to prolong her humiliation. Sitting at the breakfast table, she stirred her cup of tea absent-mindedly while flipping through a home decor magazine, not really seeing the images. Her thoughts clung to the scene in the garden, how Matthew had confronted her publicly, how she'd been forced to apologize, the looks from the guests. "Good morning, Mom." Sophia entered the kitchen, her school uniform neatly pressed, backpack on her shoulders, a radiant smile lighting her face. "It's almost time to go. I can't wait to see Emma and Lily today." Catherine felt her stomach tighten at the sound of those names again. Since the party, Sophia had spoken of little else. "Sophia, darling," she said, forcing a smile, "wouldn't you like to do something different for a change? Lucy invited you to play after school. Her mother called me yesterday." Lucy was the daughter of an important surgeon and his wife, heiress to a hotel chain, precisely the kind of friendship Catherine approved of wholeheartedly. "But I promised the twins I'd show them my new science book today," Sophia said, pouring herself some cereal. "We can meet Lucy another day." Catherine set her cup down more firmly than she intended. "It's always those twins. Honestly, Sophia, you have other friends. Friends who are more suitable." "Suitable how?" Sophia asked, genuinely puzzled. "Friends within our circle," Catherine explained, trying to keep her voice casual. "Children whose parents attend the same events we do, who share our interests." "But Emma and Lily are nice," Sophia insisted. "Emma loaned me an amazing book about dinosaurs, and Lily helped me with math yesterday. She's really smart, Mom." Catherine took a deep breath, suppressing her growing irritation. "I'm sure they're pleasant, but you must understand, dear, that there are important differences among people. Differences we should keep in mind." "What differences?" Sophia tilted her head, honest curiosity shining in her eyes. How to explain class distinctions to a 6-year-old without sounding absolutely horrible? Catherine hesitated, searching for the right words. Some people have, well, different lives, different values, different expectations, and sometimes it's better to keep a certain distance. Sophia furrowed her brow, processing her mother's words. "Dad says differences are good. He says we can learn a lot from people who aren't like us." Catherine gritted her teeth at the mention of Matthew. Since the incident, he seemed determined to make the twins Sophia's best friends, a direct challenge to her authority as a mother. "Your father has very particular opinions," she replied coldly. "But in the real world, Sophia, we have to be careful about the company we keep. People judge a family by its friendships." "Judging isn't nice," Sophia stated with the simple wisdom only children possess. "Ms. Miller says we should get to know people before we decide what we think about them." Catherine sighed. "Finish your breakfast, dear. The driver should be here soon." The conversation was going exactly like every other attempt to make Sophia see her point nowhere. The girl was clearly influenced by Matthew's ideas about equality and inclusion, romantic notions Catherine believed had no place in the social circle their family had to maintain. As Sophia finished breakfast, Catherine checked her phone. 3 unread messages from other mothers, all asking subtle variations of the same question about those girls at the party. The gossip spread quickly, as she had feared. Caroline. Heard there was a little mishap at Sophia's party. Everything okay? 290. Victoria. Sweetie, I heard some things about the party. If you need to talk, I'm here. 291. Eliza. My boys mentioned two strange girls at Sophia's party. Any juicy details for Thursday's lunch? Catherine ignored the messages, sliding the phone away in annoyance. This was exactly what she'd been afraid of: the murmuring, the whispers, the polite but invasive questions. The family's reputation was at stake, and nobody seemed to grasp that but her. I'm ready, Mom, Sophia announced, placing her empty bowl in the sink. Great. And remember what we talked about, spreading out your friendships, Catherine insisted, adjusting the collar of Sophia's uniform. Yes, Mom, Sophia replied automatically, but Catherine noticed the distant tone. The girl was already thinking about something else, probably the twins and their simple life that so fascinated her. When Sophia left, escorted by the driver, Catherine remained in the silent kitchen, her irritation turning into resolve. Something had to be done. Matthew might think he'd won this battle, but she wouldn't give up so easily. That same afternoon, when Sophia returned from school, Catherine was in the living room going over invitations for a charity event. The girl entered like a whirlwind, tossing her backpack onto the sofa and plopping down next to her mother. Mom, did you know Emma and Lily have a cat? His name is Whiskers, and they found him on the street when he was a kitten. Their mom let them keep him even though she's allergic. Isn't that amazing? Catherine kept her eyes on the invitations. Fascinating. And their apartment building has a fire escape, and sometimes they climb it to watch the stars. Can we have a fire escape too? Sophia, Catherine interrupted sharply. I'm busy right now. The girl pulled back slightly, surprised by the harsh tone. Sorry, Mum, I just wanted to tell you about my day. Catherine felt a pang of guilt, but quickly suppressed it. Why don't you tell me about your French class? Or about the science project with Lucy? Oh, Sophia seemed deflated. It was okay, I guess. The uncomfortable silence that followed was broken by the sound of the front door opening. Matthew walked in, looking tired after a long day at the office. Dad? Sophia ran to him, her excitement returning. Guess what? Emma and Lily invited me to their house on Friday. Catherine looked up abruptly, meeting Matthew's eyes. That's wonderful, Princess, he said, smiling at his daughter. I'm sure it'll be a lot of fun. We haven't agreed to anything, Catherine interjected, tension in her voice. Sophia has ballet class on Friday. Actually, Matthew responded calmly, her class ends at 4. The invitation's for 5, right, Sophia? The girl nodded vigorously. And their mum is making cookies. I don't think it's appropriate, Catherine insisted. We barely know that family. I know enough, Matthew replied firmly. Rose seems responsible and kind, and the girls are wonderful. This isn't the time to discuss it, Catherine said, shooting Sophia a pointed look. I agree, Matthew said. Sophia, why don't you go change clothes while your mum and I talk? As soon as the girl left, Catherine stood facing her husband. I won't allow this, Matthew. I will not let our daughter go to that kind of neighborhood. That kind of neighborhood, he repeated. What exactly do you think she'll find there? Drugs, criminals? Don't be ridiculous, she retorted, but it's an unsuitable area. An apartment building with no doorman, no security, and you know perfectly well what I mean. Matthew stared at her a moment longer. I know exactly what you mean, Catherine, and that's precisely why Sophia is going, to learn that the world is bigger and more diverse than this fortress of privilege we've built around her. Catherine felt her face burn with anger. You are deliberately putting our daughter in harm's way to prove some ideological point. No, he answered calmly. I'm trying to ensure our daughter grows into a decent person, not an intolerant snob. The words struck Catherine like a slap. Unable to respond, she watched Matthew climb the stairs to be with Sophia, leaving her with bitter thoughts and an unyielding determination to protect Sophia and the family's reputation at any cost. Friday arrived sooner than Catherine hoped. All week she had tried unsuccessfully to persuade Matthew to cancel Sophia's visit to the twins' home. Every attempt ended in a tense argument, cut short when one of them had to leave or when Sophia walked into the room. Each day the atmosphere in the Wells mansion grew heavier. That afternoon, Catherine watched through the window as the driver opened the car door for Sophia. The girl, wearing jeans and a simple top, certainly Matthew's choice, looked far too excited for a simple visit to a cramped apartment on the wrong side of town. Beside her, Matthew spoke with the driver, probably giving instructions about picking Sophia up later. Catherine let the curtain fall. She had lost this battle, but the war was far from over. When Matthew came back inside, their eyes locked in the foyer. No words were exchanged. He went upstairs to his office and she returned to her preparations for that evening's dinner. Catherine had planned a special dinner, just for the two of them. The chef had prepared Matthew's favorite dish. The wine was from a particularly good vintage they'd discovered on their honeymoon in Tuscany, and the table was elegantly set on the veranda, taking advantage of the mild spring evening. It was the perfect setting for a reconciliation, or at least a truce. At 7 o'clock, Matthew descended the stairs, surprised to find Catherine waiting for him, already dressed for dinner in a navy blue dress he'd once praised. "I thought we could have dinner together tonight," she said, aiming for a casual tone. "Just the two of us." Matthew hesitated before nodding. "That sounds like a good idea." On the veranda, they sat overlooking the garden, lit by small decorative lights woven through the foliage. The chef served the appetizer, a fresh asparagus soup, and withdrew discreetly. "How was your day?" Catherine asked, trying to start lightly. "Productive," Matthew replied curtly. "Yours?" "Fine. I sorted out a few details for the hospital charity ball." Polite, superficial conversation continued through the appetizer, avoiding the elephant in the room. When the main course, a wild mushroom risotto Matthew loved, was served, Catherine decided it was time to broach the real subject. "Matthew," she began carefully, "we need to talk about Sophia." He set his fork down slowly. "Yes, we do. I understand you value diversity in her friendships, but we need to set some boundaries." Matthew took a sip of wine, his eyes never leaving hers. "What kind of boundaries do you have in mind, Catherine?" "Just common sense," she replied, trying to sound reasonable. "Supervised visits in appropriate places. Maybe invite the twins here, where we can monitor their interaction instead of sending our daughter to that neighborhood." "That neighborhood," Matthew repeated slowly. "A perfectly safe middle-class area where decent, hard-working people live." "You know what I mean?" "I know exactly what you mean, Catherine, and that's exactly what worries me." Catherine felt her irritation flare but kept it in check. Tonight was about reconciliation, she reminded herself. "Matthew, dear," she tried again, softening her tone. "I'm thinking of Sophia's well-being, her future. The world can be cruel, and the connections we form early on shape our trajectory." "I agree completely," he responded. "Which is why I want her to know people from different backgrounds, to judge them by their character rather than their bank account." Catherine sighed. "That's noble in theory, but in practice? Are you trying to make our daughter an outsider in our circle, excluding her from the groups that really matter for her future?" "What groups would those be?" Matthew challenged. "Spoiled kids who only care about brand-name clothes and expensive vacations. Don't be unfair. I'm talking about children whose parents can open important doors for Sophia one day, people she'll attend schools and universities with, build careers alongside." "And you don't think she can have both?" Matthew asked. "Friends from different circles? Be realistic. Where do you think Emma and Lily will be in 10 years? Do you really believe they'll follow the same path as our daughter?" Matthew set his napkin beside his plate, his expression hardening. "Honestly, Catherine, do you hear what you're saying? You're condemning two 5-year-old girls to a limited future based solely on their family's current financial situation." "I'm being realistic," Catherine insisted, losing her grip on calm. "That's how the world works, whether you like it or not. We are not all the same. We don't all have the same opportunities. Which is precisely why people in privileged positions should try to level the field, not reinforce barriers." Catherine rolled her eyes. "Please spare me the social rhetoric. We're talking about our daughter, not politics." A tense silence fell over the table. Matthew glanced at the nearly untouched food, then at the garden beyond the veranda. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, but held an intensity that made Catherine listen carefully. "Catherine, for years I've watched your behavior, hoping you would naturally change, that your love for our daughter would overcome the prejudices ingrained in you." He paused. "But after what happened at the party, seeing how you treated those children, how you continue to talk about them, I realized we're at a fundamental impasse." Catherine's heart raced. There was something different in his tone, something she'd never heard before. "What do you mean by impasse?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. Matthew looked her straight in the eye. "If you don't change, Catherine, I can't keep living like this." His words fell like stones between them. Catherine felt a chill run down her spine, an alarming physical sensation she'd never experienced before. "Are you threatening me?" She tried to sound outraged, but her voice wavered. "I'm being honest. I can't continue in a marriage where our core values are in direct conflict. I can't keep watching you shape our daughter into the kind of person I've spent my life fighting against." Catherine laid her wineglass down, her hands trembling slightly. "The kind of person I am, you mean?" Matthew exhaled heavily. "Catherine, you do have admirable qualities. You're intelligent, determined, organized, but this elitism, this disdain for people you deem beneath you, it's something I can't tolerate anymore, especially when it starts influencing Sophia." "And what exactly are you suggesting?" Catherine's voice now held a note of panic she struggled to hide. "That we get a divorce because we disagree about childhood friendships?" "It's not just that, and you know it. It's about fundamental values, about who we want our daughter to become." He paused. "And yes, if necessary, I'm considering all options." Catherine felt as if the air had been sucked from her lungs. In 6 years of marriage, she'd never imagined it would come to this. Their union wasn't perfect, whose was, but she'd believed it to be rock solid, built on complementary traits, her practical, ambitious view balancing his occasional idealism, her social graces smoothing over his humbler origins, or so she had thought. "You wouldn't do that," she finally said, trying to regain control. "You wouldn't take Sophia away from her mother." "I would never do that," Matthew replied calmly. "But I would fight for shared custody, and I assure you any judge would be interested in hearing about the party incident, how you treated innocent children purely out of class prejudice." Catherine blanched. The mention of judges and custody battles made the threat horrifyingly real. "You don't understand," she attempted again. "I'm trying to protect our family." "No, Catherine. You're trying to protect an image, a status, a social position that exists only in your head, and you're willing to sacrifice our daughter's humanity for it." Catherine felt unexpected tears sting her eyes. "That's not fair. What's not fair is you deciding who is worthy of friendship based on zip codes and bank balances." Silence descended like a heavy weight. In the distance, the wind rustled the trees, and an occasional nightbird called out background noises to their tense breathing. "What do you want from me?" Catherine asked at last, her voice low and defeated. "I want you to genuinely try. Give these girls a real chance. Support their friendship with Sophia. Reevaluate your prejudices." Matthew reached across the table, touching her fingers gently. "I know you can do it, Catherine. It's just a matter of choice." She didn't answer. How could she explain that for her it wasn't so simple? That changing meant letting go of the control she'd always held over the family image, over her carefully curated position in a world she both admired and feared. "I need time," she finally managed. Matthew nodded, withdrawing his hand. "All right, but we don't have unlimited time." The rest of the dinner was consumed in awkward silence. The food went cold, the wine grew warm, and the distance between them seemed to grow with each passing minute, despite the small round table. Later that night, lying in bed while Matthew showered, Catherine stared at the ceiling, his words echoing in her mind. "If you don't change, Catherine, I can't keep living like this." It was real. The threat was real. For the first time, she understood that her way of thinking could cost her more than status and appearances. It could cost her family. The sound of footsteps announced Matthew's return. He slipped into bed quietly, keeping a careful distance between them. She missed his warmth, the reassuring weight of his arm around her as they drifted off to sleep. When was the last time they'd slept like that, as true companions? "Good night, Catherine," he said softly. "Good night," she replied, her voice barely audible. Catherine lay awake long after Matthew's breathing became slow and steady. Her mind churned, revisiting her privileged upbringing and the strict, appropriate standards her mother had drilled into her, the constant reminder to stay within the right level of friends. Could she change decades of conditioning? Was she willing to try, even if it meant challenging everything she'd learned about how the world works? In the days that followed, Catherine wandered around the mansion like a restless ghost. The social activities that once gave her satisfaction and purpose now felt empty. The superficial chatter with the women in her circle sounded hollow, predictable. At a charity luncheon, she found herself observing how Caroline and Victoria were mocking another mother's decision to enroll her daughter in hip-hop classes. "Imagine that," our sweet Elizabeth, shaking her hips like, "You know," Victoria whispered, glancing around to ensure their exclusive circle overheard. The others laughed knowingly. Catherine forced a smile, but a little voice inside, sounding oddly like Matthew, asked, "And what exactly is the problem? What are you really afraid of?" Matthew's threat echoed in her mind. At night she tossed and turned, picturing a life without him, without the stability of their united family. She imagined Sophia shuttling between two homes, caught between conflicting values. She imagined the pitying looks, the whispers at social events. "Did you hear? He left her because of those scholarship kids." Her resistance, however, was still strong. For Catherine, to change meant letting go of the control she'd always held over her family's image. It meant admitting she was wrong, something she rarely did. It meant relearning to see the world through entirely different lenses. On Wednesday morning, sipping coffee in silence, Catherine watched the rain outside when her eyes landed on a framed photograph on the wall. It showed Sophia around 3 years old, smiling openly, her blonde hair blown by the wind. There was so much joy in that smile, so much innocence. What do I really want for her? Catherine asked herself. What kind of person do I want her to become? The automatic answers came first. Successful, respected, well-connected. But as she stared at that frozen moment in time, deeper, truer words emerged. Happy, authentic, brave, kind. For a brief moment, Catherine realized that maybe, just maybe, the path to those qualities wasn't the one she'd always envisioned. Catherine parked her Mercedes in the designated parent slot, turned off the engine, and remained there, hands still on the wheel, trying to gather her courage. She hadn't picked Sophia up from school in years. That was usually the driver's job. But today was different. Matthew's words had cut deeper than she cared to admit, and after sleepless nights she'd decided on action. A small step perhaps, but a beginning. Her first step, she murmured, checking her lipstick in the rearview mirror. The clock read 2:45 p.m., 15 minutes before dismissal. Perfect enough time to take a deep breath and prepare mentally. Catherine wasn't used to feeling insecure, but the sight of the school playground was oddly intimidating, reminding her of her own childhood, when her mother meticulously evaluated the right kind of friends. Her phone rang. It was Rachel, one of the mothers from the charity committee Catherine chaired. "Catherine? Just confirming the 4 o'clock meeting today." "Yes, I'll be there," Catherine responded automatically, although she had completely forgotten about the commitment. "Maybe a bit late." "Is there a problem?" "No, just I'm picking Sophia up from school today." A pause on the other end. "You, personally? Is everything okay with Charles?" Charles was the driver, and the fact that Rachel knew his name only underscored how unusual it was for Catherine to take on this everyday task. "He's fine, I just want to spend more time with my daughter." Another pause. "Of course, see you later then." Catherine hung up, feeling inexplicably annoyed. Something about Rachel's surprise bothered her, like picking up your own child from school was noteworthy. "Maybe Matthew's right about some things," she muttered, putting her phone in her purse. The bell rang in the distance, announcing the end of the school day. Catherine took a deep breath, stepped out of the car, and smoothed her cashmere dress and light coat. She walked with determined steps toward the main gate, where other parents were starting to gather. Some familiar faces recognized her, and Catherine noticed whispers and surprised looks. She kept her head high, her expression carefully neutral, though she felt her nerves rising. "Catherine, what a surprise to see you here," Victoria said, approaching with her perfect smile. "Did your driver take the day off?" The question was innocent on the surface, but Catherine knew Victoria too well. She heard the malicious curiosity beneath it. "No, I just decided to pick up my daughter in person today," she replied calmly. "How devoted of you," Victoria commented, her tone implying there was something strange about it. Before Catherine could reply, the school doors opened and children started pouring out in small groups. Her eyes searched automatically for Sophia, spotting her blonde hair in the crowd. Her heart skipped a beat. Sophia was walking hand in hand with Emma and Lily, all three giggling at something that seemed hilarious. For a moment, Catherine felt the urge to retreat to the car, to wait. It would be simpler, safer. But Matthew's words echoed in her mind. "If you don't change, Catherine." She took another deep breath and stepped forward, just as Sophia spotted her. "Mom," surprise was evident on her daughter's face, "you came to get me." "Yes, sweetheart. I thought we could go for some hot chocolate on the way home." Sophia's eyes lit up, but then she glanced hesitantly at her friends, who hung back a bit, clearly recognizing Catherine and recalling the party incident. This was the moment. Catherine felt sweat on her palms, her throat suddenly dry. It would have been so easy to ignore them, pretend they weren't there, or just nod dismissively. Instead, she took 2 steps closer to the twins. "Hello, Emma and Lily," she said, forcing a smile that she hoped was genuine. "How are you today?" The girls exchanged glances, clearly surprised by the greeting. "Fine, thank you," Emma replied politely, though her posture remained guarded. "We're okay," Lily added in a near whisper. An awkward silence ensued. Catherine sensed several people were watching, some with curiosity, others with barely concealed scorn. "Would you like to join us for hot chocolate?" The words slipped out before she could fully think them through. "Of course, if your parents allow it." Sophia gasped in surprise and delight. The twins looked equally stunned. "Our mom's picking us up today," Emma said finally. "She's working nearby." "Oh, I see," Catherine replied, feeling a strange mix of relief and disappointment. "Maybe another time then." "We can ask her," Lily suggested, her shyness forgotten. "She's over there." Catherine turned to see Rose approaching the gate. The woman wore a simple cleaning uniform, probably coming straight from work. Her hair was tied in a practical bun, and she carried a worn bag over her shoulder. On noticing Catherine, her expression shifted from neutral to wary. "Good afternoon," Rose greeted, hugging her daughters briefly before turning to Catherine. "Is there a problem?" "No, none at all," Catherine quickly answered. "I was just inviting the girls to join us for hot chocolate, but I understand you came to pick them up and might have other plans." Rose studied Catherine's face, clearly looking for signs of insincerity or condescension. "Mom, can we go?" Lily asked excitedly. "Please?" "It's on me, of course," Catherine added, instantly regretting mentioning money when she saw Rose's expression harden slightly. "It's not about who pays," Rose replied calmly. "It's just—" "Mrs. Wells invited us," Emma interrupted, excited. "She was nice." Something in that innocent comment seemed to touch Rose. She looked from her daughters to Sophia, then back to Catherine. "Are you sure about this?" she asked in a low voice meant only for Catherine to hear. Catherine felt the weight of that question, the real question beneath it. "Are you sure you want to be seen publicly with my daughters? Are you sure you won't humiliate them again?" "I'm sure," she replied firmly, surprising even herself with the sincerity in her voice. As the girls cheered at Rose's permission, Catherine noticed Victoria and 2 other mothers watching with expressions ranging from shock to disapproval. She overheard Victoria whisper to her companion, "First she throws the kids out of the party in front of everyone. Now she's pretending to be the patron saint of charity. What a show." "I heard Matthew threatened her with divorce after that scandal," the other replied, not bothering to lower her voice. "Apparently he has a weakness for social causes." Catherine felt her cheeks burn. Her first instinct was to back away, rescind the invitation, revert to her old safe behavior. But then she saw Sophia's smile, so genuine, so happy, that her mother was trying to befriend her friends. In that moment, Catherine understood that her change would have to be consistent to be taken seriously. One gesture wouldn't erase her reputation or people's impressions. It was going to be a long, uncomfortable, likely lonely road. But watching Sophia with Emma and Lily, the three of them talking animatedly as they walked to the cafe, Catherine felt something unexpected, a small but unmistakable sense of peace. The next 2 weeks after that day at school were restless for Catherine. Sharing hot chocolate with the twins had only been the beginning, a small crack in a wall built over decades. Matthew noticed the change, though he made no direct comments. He observed how Catherine started asking about Sophia's day, without changing the subject when the twins were mentioned. How she didn't protest for the first time when he suggested Sophia invite Emma and Lily to play in the mansion's garden on Saturday. How she even offered to prepare snacks for the three of them. Small gestures, perhaps, but to someone who knew Catherine as well as he did, they were signs of genuine effort. The biggest challenge for Catherine wasn't the acts themselves, but the looks and whispers that accompanied them. Her social circle, once so safe and predictable, had turned into a minefield of judgments. Victoria and her friends barely disguised their disdain when Catherine casually mentioned Sophia's new friends. The group of mothers who used to invite her to exclusive lunches now seemed distant, watching her as though trying to decode an ulterior motive behind her apparent change of heart. "I hear Catherine Wells now adopts poor kids on weekends," Caroline remarked loudly enough to be overheard at a charity event. "So noble of her." The laughter that followed pricked at Catherine's skin like needles. The old Catherine would have shot back a cutting remark, putting Caroline in her place. The new Catherine, this hesitant, unsure version of herself, simply pretended not to hear, continuing to organize the donation forms. At home, things were also complex. There were moments when the old irritations returned, when Sophia excitedly described how cozy the twins' apartment was, or when Matthew commented on how Rose was doing an admirable job raising 2 daughters alone on a tight budget. Catherine caught herself biting her tongue, inhaling deeply, fighting the urge to revert to old patterns. One Wednesday morning, Catherine decided to do something she rarely did: walk through downtown. She had a charity committee meeting at a nearby hotel, and the day was too pleasant to spend cooped up in a car. She parked a few blocks away and continued on foot, pausing occasionally to look at shop windows. Her thoughts drifted, split between the meeting agenda and musings about her own transformation. Was she really changing? Or simply acting out what Matthew wanted to see to save their marriage? Distracted, she reached a busy intersection. The pedestrian light was still red, but she barely noticed as she took a step off the curb while checking a message on her phone. The car horn was deafening. A silver car sped toward her just a few yards away. Catherine froze as time seemed to slow, her brain struggling to process the imminent danger. Suddenly she felt 2 sharp tugs on her arms, yanking her back onto the sidewalk so forcefully she nearly fell backward. The car whizzed by where she'd stood just a second before, the driver shouting something out the window. "Mrs. Wells, are you okay?" Catherine blinked, stunned, and found herself staring into 2 worried faces. Emma and Lily looked at her with wide eyes, still gripping her arms with surprising strength for such small children. "Emma? Lily?" she managed, her heart pounding so hard it threatened to burst. What are you doing here?" "Our mom works in that building," Emma explained, pointing to a commercial tower across the street. "We're waiting for her to finish cleaning." "You almost got hit," Lily said, her voice quivering slightly. "Didn't you see the red light?" Catherine glanced at the traffic light, then at her phone still in her hand. The reality of what had just happened sank in, if not for the twins. You saved me," she murmured, her voice trembling. The girls exchanged embarrassed looks, uncomfortable with the praise. "Anyone would have done the same," Emma said simply, and her genuine modesty struck Catherine deeply. "No," Catherine replied, feeling unexpected tears sting her eyes. "Not everyone would have done that, especially not for someone who wasn't kind to them." Emma and Lily seemed surprised by her honesty. A strange silence settled among them, broken only by the sounds of traffic around them. "Are you crying?" Lily asked timidly. Catherine touched her cheek, shocked to find it wet with tears. She couldn't remember the last time she had cried in public. "I suppose I am," she said with a shaky smile. "It was a big scare. Do you want us to call someone?" Emma offered, always the practical one. or we can stay with you until you feel better. Their offer, so genuine and without any hidden agenda, hit Catherine like a revelation. Here were two children who had every reason to dislike her, now showing her comfort and help without expecting anything in return. "No, I'm fine now, thanks to you," she replied, trying to regain her composure. "But maybe you could keep me company for a few minutes." There was a small cafe on the corner. Catherine invited the twins for hot chocolate, quickly turning into a tradition for them. Sitting at a table by the window, the girls chatted about their school day while Catherine listened, truly seeing them for the first time. Not as the scholarship kids or the cleaning lady's daughters, but as Emma and Lily, two smart, kind and brave children who had just demonstrated more character than many adults in her privileged circle. "So our teacher said my drawing was the best in class," Lily concluded her tale, eyes shining with pride. "She even put it on the special bulletin board." "Lily is really good at art," Emma explained. "I'm better at math and science." "You're both very talented," Catherine responded sincerely. "Sophia is very lucky to have you as friends." The twins beamed, pleased by the compliment. "We really like Sophia too," Emma said. "She never treated us any different, even though she's, rich," Catherine finished softly. Emma nodded, a bit shy. "Some kids at school won't play with us because of our clothes and stuff, but Sophia never cared about that." Catherine felt something twist in her chest. "She learned that from her father," she said quietly, more to herself than to the girls. Just then, Rose walked into the cafe looking worried. Spotting her daughters at the table with Catherine, her expression turned from concern to confusion. "Mom," Lily waved excitedly, "Mrs. Wells almost got hit by a car and we saved her." Rose approached, looking questioningly at Catherine. "Are you all right?" "Thanks to your daughters, yes," Catherine answered, standing up. "They literally saved me from being run over. I was distracted and—" "She didn't even see the red light," Emma added. Rose looked from her daughters to Catherine, taking in the unusual scene. I don't know what to say. I'm glad you're okay and that my girls were there to help." "They're extraordinary, Rose," Catherine said, surprising herself by using the woman's first name. "You must be very proud." A flush rose on Rose's cheeks. "I am." After Rose thanked her for the hot chocolate and prepared to take the girls home, Catherine felt something crystallize inside her, a clarity she hadn't had in weeks of internal debate. "Rose," she called before the woman left, "I'd like to invite you all to our house for dinner. Maybe this Saturday?" Rose blinked, clearly caught off guard. "Dinner? At your house?" "Yes, nothing formal, just a way to properly say thank you and to atone for my past behavior." Rose hesitated, her gaze cautious. "You don't have to do that, Mrs. Wells. Not out of obligation or—" "It's not an obligation," Catherine interjected gently. "I want to do it, please." After a moment, Rose nodded. "All right, thank you for the invitation." When Catherine finally arrived at the committee meeting, nearly an hour late, she could scarcely focus on the topics discussed. Her mind was on Saturday, on the surprising lightness she felt, as though a weight she'd carried for years was finally beginning to lift. Saturday found the Wells mansion abuzz. Catherine had dismissed the usual kitchen staff, preferring to prepare the meal herself, something she hadn't done since the early years of her marriage. Matthew watched in a mix of surprise and curiosity as she moved about the kitchen, checking the roast in the oven and adjusting the seasoning of the sauce. "May I ask what happened to my wife and who are you?" he teased, leaning against the doorframe. Catherine smiled without taking her eyes off the stove. "Very funny. I'm serious. In 15 years together, I've never seen you so nervous about having guests." She sighed, finally looking at him. "These aren't ordinary guests, Matthew. It's important to me that everything goes perfectly." Matthew came closer and kissed her gently on the forehead, the first truly affectionate gesture in weeks. "It will be perfect because it's sincere." The doorbell rang promptly at 6. Sophia ran toward it, excited to welcome her friends, but Catherine gently stopped her. "Let me get it, sweetheart. I'd like to greet them personally." Rose and the twins stood on the front step, wearing simple but neat outfits, a small bouquet of flowers in Rose's hand. The woman looked nervous, but the girls seemed thrilled. "Welcome," Catherine said with a smile that for the first time reached her eyes. "I'm so glad you could come. The twins gazed around the impressive entry hall with the same awe as before, but this time without the fear of being expelled. Sophia soon appeared, practically bouncing with joy at seeing her friends, and within minutes, the three were off to her room to play before dinner. Rose extended the flowers hesitantly. "I wasn't sure what to bring, but—" "They're lovely," Catherine replied sincerely, accepting the bouquet. "Thank you so much." She led Rose to the living room, where Matthew was waiting. After introductions and initial conversation, Catherine excused herself to check on dinner, leaving Matthew and Rose chatting about the local school system. In the kitchen, Catherine leaned against the counter for a moment, taking a deep breath. What she was about to do wouldn't be easy, but there was a certainty she hadn't felt in a long time. She was no longer acting just out of fear of losing Matthew or to keep up appearances. For the first time, she was acting from genuine conviction. When everyone gathered at the dining table, a scene that would have seemed impossible just weeks earlier, Catherine stood, tapping her glass lightly to get their attention. "Before we start, I'd like to say a few words," she announced, feeling her heart pound. "Emma, Lily, I invited you tonight not just to thank you for saving my life at that crosswalk, but also because I wanted a proper moment for something important." Catherine took a steadying breath and turned directly to the twins. "I want to apologize once more, but this time in the right way." She paused, searching for the correct words. "The truth is that on the day of the party, the person who should have been ashamed was me, not you." A profound silence fell over the table. Matthew watched her with an intensity she hadn't seen in a long time. Rose seemed stunned. "I was wrong," Catherine continued, her voice stronger now. "Wrong in my actions, my judgments, my prejudices. You two are extraordinary girls, and I was blind not to see that from the start." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. Suddenly she jumped out of her chair and ran to her friends, wrapping them in a tight hug. "I'm sorry too for not defending you that day," she whispered, though everyone could hear. Emma and Lily, clearly moved, hugged her back. "It's okay, Mrs. Wells," Emma finally said. "Everybody makes mistakes." "Yeah," Lily agreed, "and you're different now." The simplicity of a child's forgiveness was overwhelming. Catherine felt her own tears threatening to spill, but for the first time in her adult life, she let them flow freely. They were a physical symbol of the barriers finally coming down inside her. When she finally sat, Matthew's hand found hers under the table, giving it a supportive, affectionate squeeze. Their eyes met, and she saw in his gaze not just forgiveness, but a renewed admiration. Dinner proved surprisingly relaxed. Rose, initially tense, gradually eased when it became clear Catherine's apology was genuine. The girls chatted happily, telling school stories and making plans for future playdates. Matthew and Rose discovered mutual interests. Both enjoyed gardening, though on drastically different scales. Observing the scene, Catherine felt something she hadn't felt since childhood, a sense of peace and belonging that had nothing to do with status or appearances. It was simply the comfort of being among sincere people, free of social games or artificial expectations. Later, as Rose and the twins prepared to leave, Catherine accompanied them to the door along with Matthew and Sophia. The children exchanged goodbye hugs as though they'd been friends for years, perhaps. In a sense, they were. "Thank you for tonight," Rose said sincerely. "It was unexpected but wonderful. I hope we can do it again," Catherine replied, surprising even herself with how much she truly meant it. As the car Matthew had arranged to take them home disappeared down the street, Sophia yawned and announced she was off to bed, leaving her parents alone in the doorway. "You amazed me today," Matthew said softly, pulling her closer. "I amazed myself," she admitted. "But you know what? For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm being who I should be, not shaped by my family's expectations or social pressure or fear of losing status. Just me." Matthew smiled, kissing her softly. "And that Catherine is who I always knew was under all those layers." Together they went back inside, leaving behind old patterns and embracing the possibility of a different future. One where human worth wasn't measured by bank statements, and where the most unlikely friendships could lead to the deepest transformations. 2 weeks had passed since the dinner at the Wells mansion. Spring was in full swing, transforming the garden into a kaleidoscope of colors. The roses were just beginning to bloom, birds sang in the leafy trees, and the grass glowed bright green in the afternoon sun. Catherine made her way down the corridor that led to the backyard veranda, carrying a tray with lemonade and cookies. Through the wide glass doors, she spotted the three girls playing in the garden. They'd set up a sort of camp with sheets tied between patio chairs, creating an improvised tent under the shade of an old oak. Sophia was animatedly explaining something to Emma and Lily, gesturing excitedly as they nodded, fully absorbed. Suddenly, all three burst into laughter, a pure, crystalline sound that echoed across the garden, making Catherine smile involuntarily. She paused before stepping outside, just watching. Anyone seeing that scene, three little girls happily playing, would never guess the journey it had taken to make it possible. The invisible barriers that had to be torn down, the prejudices confronted, the painful lessons learned. "Lemonade for the explorers," Catherine finally announced, heading into the garden. The girls emerged from the tent, faces flushed from play and the mild spring sun. "Thanks, Mom." Sophia ran to help with the tray. "Thanks, Mrs. Wells," Emma and Lily said almost in unison, something that still made Catherine smile. The twins had that almost magical synchronicity. "You can call me Catherine," she reminded them, as she had done several times in recent weeks. The girls still hesitated. Rose had taught them formality from a young age, and it wasn't easy to break. "We're exploring the Amazon," Lily explained, taking a cup of lemonade. "Sophia has an amazing book about the rainforest. And we found 3 rare species of butterflies," Emma added seriously, pointing to colorful drawings scattered on a blanket. "Impressive," Catherine replied, genuinely charmed by their imagination. "We have some real butterflies here in the garden too. If you look by the hibiscus near the wall, you might see them." The girls' eyes lit up at the information, and they started planning to expand their expedition to spot real butterflies. Catherine stepped back a few paces, settling into a nearby patio chair, close enough to supervise but far enough to give them space. She watched as Sophia shared her butterfly knowledge from her many books. Emma chimed in with sharp questions, and Lily added artistic observations on colors and patterns. It was a perfect balance of personalities. Sophia ever eager and curious, Emma logical and analytical, Lily sensitive and creative. Together, they complemented one another in a way that felt both rare and precious. That train of thought led Catherine back to her own school days. How different might her life have been if she'd been encouraged to form friendships based on genuine connection rather than social status. If she hadn't been taught so early to judge others by where they lived or what they wore. Her own parents especially, her mother had been strict about whom she could socialize with. "Keep your circle high, Catherine," her mother would say. "People judge you by the company you keep." For years, Catherine followed that advice without question, believing that keeping an exclusive circle was a form of protection and advantage. Only now, at 40, was she realizing how much she'd missed because of that mindset. How many potential friendships, enriching experiences and life lessons had slipped by due to arbitrary walls she'd helped build. "Her penny for your thoughts." Matthew's voice interrupted her reverie. He approached quietly, smiling as he watched the girls crouch near a flower bed, intently studying a blue butterfly that had landed there. "Just enjoying the view," she replied softly. "It's a good view," he agreed. "The best," she nodded. For a few minutes they sat in comfortable silence, just watching the children. It was one of those unexpected, perfect moments. The late afternoon golden sunlight, the sound of childish laughter, the peace of being together without needing words. "Rose called earlier," Matthew said eventually. "She wanted to confirm that it's okay for the girls to stay for dinner." "Of course it's okay. They can stay as long as they like." Matthew looked at her with a mix of surprise and admiration. "You know, I'm still getting used to this." "Used to what?" "To you, this new version of you." He took her hand. "Or maybe it's not new. Maybe it's who you've always been beneath all those layers." Catherine thought about that. "I think it's always been there, just buried under years of conditioning and fear of not being accepted, of losing status, of failing expectations, mine and everyone else's. And now? Now? She looked at the girls who had returned to their makeshift tent to draw their discoveries in a notebook. Now I feel something I haven't felt in years. Maybe I've never truly felt it. What is it? Peace, she said simply. Peace with myself and the world around me. Like I've finally found my place without needing to prove anything to anyone. Matthew squeezed her hand gently. Looks like you've finally found what really matters. Catherine smiled, feeling genuine emotion rise in her chest. Yes, and I never want to lose sight of it again. The past weeks had been transformative on more levels than she could have anticipated. Her social circle had changed drastically. Victoria and her group had drifted away, clearly disapproving of her new stance, while other mothers, like Diana, had drawn closer. To Catherine's surprise, she didn't miss the superficial appearance-based friendships. Instead, she'd built an unexpected connection with Rose. After that initial dinner, the two women began talking more regularly. Catherine discovered a strength and wisdom in Rose that she'd never noticed before when she only saw her as the cleaning lady. Rose, in turn, gradually lowered her guard, seeing Catherine as more than just the rich, snobby employer. There were uncomfortable moments, of course, times when cultural and socio-economic differences became apparent, causing minor misunderstandings. But both were willing to navigate those uncertain waters for the sake of their daughters, and, increasingly, for a genuine mutual appreciation. What are you thinking about now? Matthew asked, noticing her distant look. How strange life's path can be, Catherine answered. If someone told me 2 months ago that I'd be sitting here watching Sophia play with Emma and Lily, feeling completely at peace about it, I'd have thought it absurd. Life has a funny way of teaching us exactly what we need to learn, even if we resist with all our might, Catherine agreed with a soft laugh. Suddenly, excited chatter came from the tent. Sophia emerged, running with Emma and Lily close behind. Mom, Dad, we just had the best idea, she exclaimed, eyes sparkling. Can we have a picnic at Maplewood Park next Saturday? All of us. You, me, Emma, Lily, and Ms. Rose. Catherine and Matthew exchanged a glance. A picnic in a public park wasn't something the old Catherine would have considered, too concerned about appearances and whether it was the right kind of place. That sounds like a wonderful idea, Catherine replied without hesitation. We can bring that big picnic basket and make sandwiches and chocolate chip cookies, Lily interjected. And grape juice, Emma added. Done, Matthew said, laughing at the children's enthusiasm. An official picnic is on the schedule. The girls cheered and ran back to their tent, already plotting every detail. A picnic at Maplewood Park, Matthew commented quietly. Catherine Wells sitting on a blanket in the grass eating homemade sandwiches. Who would have thought? Times are changing, she replied with a smile. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky with orange and pink tones. Its golden light bathed the garden, casting long, dancing shadows on the grass. It was one of those perfect moments that felt suspended in time, so ordinary, yet so extraordinary. Matthew slipped his arm around Catherine's shoulders, pulling her closer. Together they watched the children reappear from the tent, showing off colorful drawings they wanted to share. Look at what Lily drew, Sophia exclaimed, proudly holding up a sheet of paper. It was a simple but expressive drawing, 6 figures holding hands, 3 small ones and 3 bigger ones in front of a house. Above them, a large yellow sun and a blue sky. It was labeled, Our Family, written in the scrawling hand of a 5-year-old. Catherine felt a lump form in her throat. Our family. Not just the 3 figures clearly representing her, Matthew and Sophia, but also Rose, Emma and Lily all together, all connected. It's beautiful, Lily, she managed, her voice catching slightly. The girls, satisfied with the adults' reaction, ran off to continue playing, leaving Catherine and Matthew to contemplate the meaning of that simple child's drawing. Our family, Matthew repeated softly. Feels right, doesn't it? Catherine nodded, momentarily unable to speak. Finally, she found her voice. It feels perfect. And there in the garden, drenched in the setting sun, accompanied by the sound of children's laughter, Catherine learned the most important lesson of her life. True wealth was never about bank accounts, mansions, or exclusive social circles. It was always in the genuine connections we build with others, in our ability to see beyond appearances, in the love that transcends artificial boundaries. Sophia, Emma, and Lily, three girls, so different in so many ways, yet bound by a pure and sincere friendship, had taught everyone a powerful lesson. Prejudice, once overcome, makes space for something far more valuable. An extended family, united not by blood or status, but by respect and love. And as day gave way to night, with stars beginning to punctuate the sky over the garden, Catherine knew with absolute certainty that this was only the first page of a new chapter, a chapter brighter, richer, and infinitely more genuine than any she had lived before. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.